He tells her straight up, marriage is off the table for him. Not gonna happen. She was honest too. She said marriage was important to her. They decided to stop seeing each other.
No way. How does she even manage that?
Okay, let's dive right in. We've got a really interesting personal story today, one that's been floating around online.
It's about someone's view on marriage, a really deeply held belief, and how it completely shifted.
Yeah, a total 180. And what we want to do is kind of unpack why. What were the actual turning points?
Exactly. Our sources are, well, it started as a Reddit post, just someone sharing their experience.
Right, very personal.
And then it got picked up and discussed on, of all places, a YouTube channel about gaming.
Which adds an interesting layer, doesn't it? How these stories travel. So our mission, if you like, is to figure out the triggers for this big change in perspective on, a massive life decision.
So let's set the scene. The person sharing the story, he's 23.
Just graduated college.
Right, working in a cafe, but really pouring his energy into a YouTube gaming channel.
And he seems pretty realistic about it, too. He actually mentioned the statistic, that only about 7% of creators make decent money.
Which I think is important context,
Yeah.
right? It suggests he's not, totally naive. He's got a practical side.
Definitely grounded, which makes his later emotional turnaround feel even more significant, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah.
It shows that even someone quite pragmatic can have these fundamental shifts. So what was his initial stance?
Okay, so he meets this woman, Gigi. Things are going well, but date number 5.
The fifth date conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He tells her straight up, marriage is off the table for him. Not gonna happen.
And this wasn't just a casual thing.
No, not at all. It stems from his parents' divorce, which sounds like it was really messy and left some deep scars.
Wow. Okay, so real trauma influencing this belief. And he was honest about it early on.
Very honest, which, takes guts on a 5th date.
For sure. Kind of setting a boundary based on some painful history. You wonder if he thought that would be the end of it with Gigi.
It could have been. And Gigi, she was honest too. She said marriage was important to her.
So a direct conflict.
Pretty much. Though she wasn't thinking, immediately. Maybe in a couple of years, she said.
Okay, so not tomorrow, but definitely on her radar.
Exactly. And because their views were so different, they decided to stop seeing each other.
Makes sense. A fundamental incompatibility, at least on the surface. So what changed?
Well, this is the interesting part. Only 2 weeks go by.
2 weeks. It's fast.
Yeah, I know. He calls Gigi, says he's been thinking, and that, okay, maybe he could see himself getting married if things kept feeling right, but on a longer timeline.
Like how long?
5 years. He proposed a 5-year time frame. If they were still good, still strong, then maybe.
Wow. Okay, that's a significant concession, even with the time frame. It's not a no anymore.
Exactly. It's an I'm willing to explore this possibility with you. So they get back together.
And then?
Then maybe 6 months later, they move in together.
Whoa, okay. That feels quick after reconciling with that 5-year condition hanging there.
He called it testing the waters, which I guess feels like a sensible step if you're trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah, putting the relationship under the microscope of daily life. That 5-year idea is interesting, though. It gives space, but also a kind of deadline almost. What made him reach out after just those 2 weeks, do we know?
The story doesn't spell it out, but maybe just missing her or realizing the connection was worth fighting for, even against his own fears.
Could be. And this is where Gigi's actions start to become really central, right?
Absolutely. Because once they're living together, she apparently showed just incredible understanding about his family stuff.
The trauma from the divorce.
Yeah. The story implies she was just very careful, very supportive around that whole issue. Didn't push, just understood.
That kind of quiet, consistent support could be huge, can it? Especially with deep-seated emotional wounds. It builds trust.
Totally. Then comes the big one, his birthday.
Okay.
Gigi plans this party secretly, and she invites his parents.
His estranged parents. Both of them.
Both of them, who apparently could barely be in the same room together.
No way. How does she even manage that?
It says she spent months coordinating it, talking to each parent separately,
How?
telling them about, how much pain their conflict still caused him, how much he just needed some peace for his birthday.
That's serious emotional intelligence and effort. Like mediating almost.
Seriously, and the amazing thing, it worked.
No drama.
No drama. Both parents came, they were civil, they were there for him.
That must have blown him away. Seeing that happen,
Yeah.
orchestrated by her.
You have to imagine it did, but wait, there's more.
Oh, okay.
So sometime later, he has just a killer day.
Yeah.
Job interviews, then his shift at the cafe, then he's trying to film his YouTube video.
Ugh, one of those days. We've all been there.
Totally. He's running on fumes, grabs coffee, starts recording, and just passes out on the couch mid-sentence.
Oh no, just complete exhaustion.
Yep, wakes up later in a panic thinking, oh God, the video file, it's gone. I lost everything.
That sinking feeling.
But he looks, and there's a file saved. He opens it, and it shows Gigi. She'd found him asleep, like, gently moved him so he was comfortable, covered him with a blanket.
Oh, that's sweet.
And then, get this, she has no idea how his recording software works right now.
Okay.
So she sits down, looks up an online tutorial, and figures out how to stop the recording properly and save the file for him.
Whoa. Seriously. Just taught herself on the spot to save his work.
Just like that, because she knew how much it meant to him.
That's not a grand gesture, but it's incredibly profound, isn't it? It's practical, thoughtful support for his passion, his work, even when he was completely out of it.
Exactly. And for him, that was apparently the moment.
The final straw, in a good way.
Totally. He says he literally checked his savings account right then and there.
No, really.
Went out that same day, bought an engagement ring.
You're kidding? From saving the video file to buying a ring.
That day. And he proposed that night. Took her to her favorite restaurant and asked her to marry him.
Wow. So it wasn't the big birthday party miracle, but this quiet act of care that just flipped the switch.
Seems like it. It just showed him, I guess, what partnership could really look like, maybe. Different from what he'd feared.
It really speaks to how actions, sometimes small specific actions, can dismantle these huge beliefs we carry around. It wasn't about arguing about marriage. It was seeing it lived out differently.
Yeah. And his final thought in the story, it really sums it up. He said, sometimes the right person can change everything you thought you believed. I used to think marriage was a mistake. Now I know some people are worth the risk.
That hits hard, doesn't it? That phrase, worth the risk. Acknowledging the fear, but choosing it anyway.
It's powerful. Shows that real change is possible, even from deep-seated fears rooted in childhood.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, the YouTube hosts who originally shared this story, they described Gigi as like something special.
Yeah, and calm, patient, and strong.
And based on these actions. Yeah, that seems pretty accurate. Not just empty praise.
Definitely earned. So, okay, the question that came up when this story was discussed online, and I guess it's the big one for you, the listener, too.
Could you wait 5 years for someone you loved who was saying, I'm not sure about marriage, but maybe in 5 years?
Oof. That's tough. It's so personal, isn't it?
Totally.
I mean, it depends so much on the connection, obviously, but also, crucially, on what's happening during those 5 years.
Right. Is the person actively working through their stuff? Are they showing commitment in other ways?
Exactly. Is it like this story, where Gigi saw him genuinely grappling with it and making efforts, showing vulnerability, demonstrating partnership through actions? That feels very different from waiting for someone who's just resistant, or kicking the can down the road without doing any internal work.
Yeah, the quality of the waiting period matters. Are you seeing progress? Are you seeing effort?
And are your needs being met in the meantime in other ways? It's a huge gamble asking someone to put their own life goals on hold, even for 5 years. What if at the end the answer is still no?
That's the risk he talked about, I suppose, just from the other side. Precisely. It really forces you to think about trust and communication and what commitment truly looks like beyond the legal certificate.
It does, and it brings us back to that core idea from the story, really.
Which is?
That maybe sometimes deeply held beliefs, the ones we think define us, they aren't as fixed as we assume.
Right. They can be shifted, not necessarily by arguments or debates, or even just the passage of time.
But by actions, by specific moments of understanding, of care, of someone showing up in a way that offers a completely different perspective.
Yeah. Those concrete demonstrations of empathy or support, they can be the tipping points, can't they? The things that make you reevaluate everything.
So maybe the final thought for you to mull over is this. Think about your own life. Have there been moments where your view on something really important shifted? And if it did, was it because someone convinced you with words? Or was it because of something someone did, an experience you had, or an act of unexpected kindness or understanding, like Gigi saving that video file? What are those tipping point actions in our own lives?
That wraps up today's story. Drop your thoughts below, hit like, share it around, and subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode.